we have talked about the gaseous exchange in plants in detail in our class. So let's revise again. And the target of this video is to make sure you can analyze these kinds of graph very, very accurately with good explanations. Okay, so we first go back to the notes. And the related part is, of course, the parts that we copied during our class and this part. Okay, so look at the x-axis. The x-axis here represents the degree of light. All right, so it's different from what we have in our lessons. In our lessons, our x-axis represent time. So here, imagine I put a plant in front of a lamp. All right, and I'm going to move these lamps front and back to create different light intensities and see how fast the plant is doing photosynthesis and gaseous exchange. So when there's not enough light, the plant doesn't do photosynthesis. The plant only has R, respiration. Do you remember what does this part mean? This region represents that the light is enough for the plant to have photosynthesis, but the rate of photosynthesis is still too slow compared with respiration. Okay? How about this point? The plant doesn't take in overallly, okay, net in terms of overall results, the plant doesn't take in CO2 or doesn't give out CO2 to the air. Well, this point, of course, means P equals to R. All right, the rates are the same. And we call this point the compensation point. 好易記㗎啦. Compensation means 補償. 乜嘢補償咗乜嘢呢？我哋嘅意思就係話 respiration 所製造嘅 CO2 嘅份量咧，啱啱好補償到 photosynthesis 所用嘅 CO2 嘅份量，咁就係所謂嘅補償啦。Okay? So afterwards, when there's more and more light, the rate of P now becomes greater than R. And that's why there's a net uptake of CO2 from the air. Okay, so once again, we are going to explain in words. So I'm going to illustrate the explanation again. All right, we have done that in the class, but again, let's make sure everyone understands. So, here A, B, C, D, E means these. A, B, C, D, E, okay? Alright, so let's pick point C as an example and see how we explain all these, okay? So, at point C, the rate of photosynthesis is equal to rate of respiration. That is P equals to R, okay? I don't write this in exam, okay? Write the full name. But then, what does it mean? Well, it means that 記唔記得第二要提咩？第二點係要提 respiration 同 photosynthesis 關 CO2 咩事呢？係咪？關咩事啊？關事嘅地方就係話 that means the amount of CO2 used by photosynthesis is equal to the amount of CO2 released or produced by respiration. The keyword are these words, okay? You tell me whether P or R use or release CO2. So what's the conclusion? Remember, 當你比較咗兩個方向或者過程相反嘅現象嘅時候咧，嗰個結論一定要有個 word net, so there is So in this case, there is no net uptake or release of CO2 from or to the air. Okay? So I'm going to complete these parts and put it in a photo in WhatsApp, alright? But now we need a better understanding of this graph, alright? This is a similar graph that we have in the class. First question. What is the rate of respiration? My hint is, look for the moment that the plant only do respiration. At which time point or in which time period does the plant only do respiration, and why? Do you look for the time do you look for daytime or nighttime? Think about it, right? So you look for nighttime, you look for the point or the time that there is no light at all. So probably it's AB, right? So the rate of respiration is 10. Don't forget to copy the units. Alright, mg per hour. That's easy, right? So we go deeper now. We are going to calculate the actual rate of photosynthesis. Remember, it's actual rate of photosynthesis at point C, K, and D. Point C is here. Is there any photosynthesis? It reads 0. So does it mean the rate of photosynthesis is 0? No. Well, if you remember, this point is P equals to R. So that's why although it means 0, it means that it takes up 0 CO2 from air. 0 CO2 from air. But it also used the 10 CO2 that is from respiration. So overall, it means that the plant has used 10 unit of CO2, 10 mg of CO2 per hour. So that's the rate of photosynthesis at point C. If I'm going to draw this in picture, it means that 0 CO2 from air, 10 CO2 from respiration. So that's why overall the plant has used 10. So 0 plus 10. Look at point K. Okay. How much CO2 is being taken up from air? Yeah, that's 20 because you read it from the graph. Is there any other source of CO2? Of course, it's from respiration. So it's 10. So that's why together photosynthesis used 30 mg of CO2 per hour. And that's the rate of P. Alright? Point D, you do it by yourself. Alright? We'll check it later in WhatsApp. Alright? So make sure you get the answer. Here, I would like to emphasize our assumption in our calculation. Well, actually, this calculation makes sense because we assumed one thing. Look at these values. These values represent the rate of respiration. Alright, if you look at the graph, I can tell the respiration rate from A to B is 10 because it's actually shown in the graph. Oh, but you think about it. At point K and point C, what is the rate of respiration? Can you tell that from the graph directly? No. The point K only tells you that it takes up 20 mg CO2 per hour from the air. It doesn't tell you the respiration rate at all. But we assume that the respiration rate is 10 because we assume that at moment K, the respiration rate is same as before. Well, if you think about the sentence for human, let's say, it's very inaccurate, it's very inappropriate, because think about it. When you do exercise, let's say, your respiration rate shoots up, right? So if I say a human's respiration rate is the same throughout the day, that's meaningless. That's ridiculous, right? But if we look at the plant, well, that idea makes sense, or at least it's reasonable. I won't say it's total truth, but at least it's a reasonable guess. Because if you look at the plant, the rate of it doesn't have a lot of activity change, right? So it's true that for respiration, no matter in nighttime or daytime, is very similar. So to have calculations, we actually assumed that the respiration rate of plant remains unchanged. Throughout the day. That's why we can add the word 10 here. 喂，其實你睇 Point C 同 K， 你鬼知個 respiration rate 係幾多咩？可能熱啲，可能日頭光啲，佢 respiration rate 快少少啦。佢一快咗咧，你睇唔出係幾多喎。嗱，如果係咁咧，咁我哋冇數計，或者我哋冇得估計到佢實際 photosynthesis rate 係幾多喎，係咪啊？咁但係我哋又覺得，咦唔，或者我哋科學家知道咧，咦唔係喎，其實植物嘅 respiration rate 都幾穩定喎，全日，咁可能爭少少啦。咁但係為咗令到有一個合理嘅估計咧，我哋覺得我哋腦屈 respiration rate 係10咧，呢件事幾合理喎，你講唔上腦屈喎，植物嘅 respiration rate 真係差唔多喎。咁所以我哋就為咗要有一個 estimation of photosynthesis rate 咧，我哋就假設呢棵植物嘅 respiration rate 係不變啦。喺呢啲計算喺呢啲 graph 裏面咧，我哋永遠都做呢一個假設，先至有呢啲數可以計嘅。OK， 呢個係我第一樣想透過呢個 video 教嘅嘢。好啦，第二樣我想喺呢度教嘅 skill 咧，就係呢個。當一幅 graph 嘅 y-axis 係 rate 嘅時候咧，咁到底呢幅 graph 嘅 area， 例如我抽呢一橛，好嗎？呢一個 area 有咩 meaning 嘅咧？咁樣好啦，我哋想教嘅呢個 skill 啊，呢個 skill 好重要嘅。咁我哋咧嘗試唔好畫到條線咁騎呢，好嗎？我哋咧先將呢幅圖畫咧畫到好弱智先，弱智到一個地步係咩咧？係直線先，好嗎？就當橫線添，你好嗎？就當咁低 B 咧，好冇？好啦。Rate 嘅定義咧就係 per time 嘅。例如，你睇下我哋今次呢幅圖畫個單位係咪 mg per hour 係嘛？咁我作個數啊嘛，呢度例如5，呢個 time 咧係0、1、2、3、4，好嘛 ？time 自然就係 hour 啦，好啦。呢個長方形嘅面積點鬼樣計啦？你諗下，長方形嚟噶嘛？長方形面積點計啊？咪長乘闊啦，係嘛？長係幾多？呢度幾多？呢度咪5咯。呢度幾多？4減2，呢度咪2啊？係嘛？呢個圖畫嘅 area 就等於5乘以2啦，就等於10。齋玩數字冇用嘅，我哋要嘅咧係個 meaning， 即係我乘埋係10係咩意思先？我哋就諗咯，5係咩單位啊？5係 mg per hour， 2啊，2嘅單位係 hour 喎，咁即係話乘出嚟10呢個數係咩單位咧？10呢個數咧係 mg 喎，因為 hour cancel 咗喎。mg 係咩單位嘅？mg 係重量嘅單位嚟嘅喎。咁所以我哋其實講緊咩咧？我哋講緊嘅係，如果你有一幅圖畫係講緊 rate 個 y-axis， 個 area 咧其實係 amount 嘅意思，係嘛？每個鐘吸5個 mg 嘅 CO2， 咁2個鐘咪吸10個咯，5乘2啊嘛，咪吸10個 mg 咯。所以呢幅圖畫表達嘅意思咧係 amount of 係 amount 份量。既然橫線係咁咧，咁我哋就從數學 N2 先識啦嚇，咁啊唔好理啦。總之我哋係可以推演去成為話知你條 curve 咩樣都好。總之如果個 y-axis 係 rate，x-axis 係 time， 話知個 area 咩形狀都好咧，我哋個 area 咧個含義就係 rate 同 time 之間嘅相乘，含義係咁啫，實際即係話係嗰個 amount。OK， 好啦，咁對呢幅圖係咩意思咧？咁你睇下啦喎 ，x 有個面積係嘛 ，y 又有個面積噶嘛。呢啲梯形嘅面積代表咗咩咧？呢啲梯形嘅面積就代表咗 amount。好啦，咁 amount of 乜鬼嘢咧？乜嘢嘅 amount 啊？喂，既然係咁，咪照抄 y-axis 咯。諗翻 y-axis 係嘛？每個鐘放10個 CO2， 乘埋咪即係 amount of CO2 release 咯，係嘛？咁如果 y 咧，睇翻 y-axis 照抄咯，不過將個 rate 字轉做 amount， 係嘛？OK， 好啦，所以我哋解答到 question 3啦嚇。x 係乜 ，y 係乜，自己寫咯。我哋呢度想講嘅咧係講深多一層。你睇下呢幅圖 ，y 大定 x 大 ？y 大喎，睇個細。y 大過 x 係咩含義咧？其實背後第一分梗係將 y 同 x 嘅意義寫出嚟先啦。y 大過 x，it means that the amount of CO2 taken up by the plant is greater than the amount of CO2 released。諗深一層咯，植物攞啲 CO2 去做乜鬼啊？植物攞啲 CO2 去做 photosynthesis 噶嘛？做 photosynthesis 嚟做咩啊 ？produce food 咯。所以你諗下，如果我知道棵植物吸幾多 CO2， 其實佢反映出一樣嘢嘅，佢反映出 the amount of organic food made by photosynthesis 㗎。嗱，我嘗試用唔同嘅符號去代表唔同嘅意思啊！我哋就係話，當我見到棵植物吸幾多 CO2 咧，植物吸越多 CO2， 其實咪反映緊植物整得越多食物咯。明唔明啊？明唔明呢個意思啊？咁嗱，冇話即係嗱，例如呢個 y 嘅面積係200先算啊，或者300先算啊。嗱，就咁啊，梗係唔係代表真係整咗300 mg food 啦嚇，但係佢哋之間係互相反映啦。uptake 咗300個 CO2， 唔等於整咗300個 organic food，但係一定係代表整咗好多啦。例如係嘛，吸少啲 CO2 一定係反映緊整少啲 organic food 啦。咁所以呢度係有關係嘅。好啦，同樣道理啦。點解會無啦啦有啲 CO2 放出嚟嘅咧？就代表 respiration 啊嘛，係嘛 ？respiration 對啲食物喺度做乜嘅咧 ？respiration 係拆食物噶嘛，係用食物噶嘛，係嘛？咦？咁好得意喎！咁即係話，我哋比較緊 CO2 吸多全日裡面啊，全日裡面吸多定放多，其實我哋就可以從此推論到咧，一棵植物喺全日裡面咧，到底整食物多啊，定係用食物多嘅喎？係嘛？咁如果佢整食物多過用食物，喂，你諗下人，你諗下咩生物都好啦，整多過用。對佢成棵植物嘅體重有咩分別咧？兩個方向相反，所以我哋結論係咩啊 ？The plant has a net 係嘛？希望你諗得到啊！佢結論 net production of food。諗下呢棵植物係咩樣？一棵植物整多咗食物，即係食物擺喺邊啊？咪擺喺佢裡面咯。咁所以一棵植物會唔會大咗重咗咯？你幻唔幻想到啊？一棵植物大咗重咗，咪即係話棵植物生長咗啦。OK， 我哋睇多次呢個故事，諗多次幅 graph 好嘛？我哋話 ，so our idea is that from the area，we can first tell the amount of CO2 uptake and CO2 release. So that's point number 1. From the amount of CO2 uptake and CO2 release, we can deduce the amount of food made and food used. Okay? And from this, we can deduce whether the plant has a net production or net usage. Alright, you can use the word gain as well. So that means, is there a net gain or net loss of organic food? And by the amount of organic food, we can deduce whether the plant is growing or not growing throughout that day. Okay, so 呢幅 graph 俾我哋上堂嘅時候咧，我哋而家希望透過呢個 video 教多兩樣嘢啦。第一就係話點樣揾 actual rate 同埋我哋揾 actual rate 嘅時候背後嘅 assumption， 呢個第一點。第二點係咩咧？我哋好強調教就係話面積有咩含義，同埋比較面積嘅時候，我哋能夠做多一啲嘅推論。OK，So that's the end of chapter 9.